OKC Thunder season ticket holder, touching the wood at all these games. Father, author, entrepreneur, a personal friend of mine, been in the industry since 2004, right? And what's so dope about Vance, what's so dope about you is that you don't just do credit repair, you niched it down to suing debt collectors, suing and winning against debt collectors. So can you talk about that for me?
Oh yeah. So, well, everything that I teach people, I've personally been through it, right? So, say for an example, as you guys can see the camera, you see this scar right here, right? So, um, I wasn't just always following the rules, going down the road. So, what I was doing was I was going to work, and I was working on drilling rigs. I was probably driving like 4 or 5 hours away from my house in Oklahoma City, staying with my parents, right? So I was driving down the road. I had some Long John Silvers, so I'm eating like some fish, and I'm driving with one leg on the steering wheel, and I was talking on the speakerphone, right? And so I got into a wreck. The bystanders or people that was looking, they called the ambulance. So I went out the front windshield, and then they called the ambulance. Went to the hospital, checked me out, and stuff like that. So I didn't pay the bill, and then next thing you know, here comes the phone calls, here comes um, the letters and stuff like that. So what I did was I got a recorder, and I just started recording the calls, right? So I'm thinking I'm doing everything I was supposed to do under the sun. So what I did was recorded the calls. They kept calling, and then I went to small claims, and then the judge was just because they didn't say the mini Miranda, so that's a requirement under the FDCPA when they contact you, like this is an attempt to collect the debt, things of that nature. And so they didn't say it, or they didn't say it at all, really. And so I took them to small claims, like, oh, okay, yeah, this. I was under the assumption that all judges knew the law, and that's not true. So what had happened was we went to court, and the judge asked me, is this a criminal case or is this a civil case? And I'm like, oh my God. So she dismissed the case. So when she dismissed the case, the debt collector went downstairs, and then they sued me. So, I'm kind of bummed down because I lost the case. And then um my dad calls me saying, hey, you know, you got some papers here. It's like some guys who dropped some papers here. So I'm like, what is it? So go to the house, look at the documents. They're suing me now. So now I got to go back to the drawing board. And so what happened was I drew up a motion to dismiss because in the state of Oklahoma, a debt collector can't sue in small claims. And then so I draw my motion to dismiss, file it with the courts, and so the judge just automatically, when we came to court that day, she just looked at the guy and said, case dismissed." So now, I got my chest out a little bit, and so look, I'm like, dude, now you didn't say the mini Miranda, and then you did something that you could not legally do, and now I'm just going to take you to federal court. So in this whole ordeal, it's a legal clause called res judicata, and what that is if a case is tried on its merits, then you can't bring it up again. And so what happened was it was not res judicata because when we went to small claims, the judge was like, "Is this a criminal matter or a civil matter?" So the merits wasn't heard on the case. And so I had to plead out all of that stuff. So I had to do it in, very good detail because we're talking about, judges and what was said and things like that. So um, all in all, I came out victorious. But what was shocking about that experience was the judge leaned back into his seat and was just like, hey, um, you might need to go outside and strike up a deal with this young man because I had the recorder, I had the recorder transcribed, I had all my evidence. I was just ready to go. I was just like, okay, let's do it. And so my first case ended up settling for $3,500.
How did you know to initially do that? Like, how did you know to record it in the first place? So, when debt collectors call us, they have to say you're on a recorded line. But how did you know to do that back? And can we all do that?
Well, yeah. So to answer your question, simple. Yeah, we all can do that. We all can record the call. So let me, as easy as I might explain it, people understanding it, it might be a little bit difficult, right? So I'm in Oklahoma and you're in Florida. So I believe that Florida is a two-party consent state, meaning the both parties on the phone has to know that the phone call is being recorded. And so in Oklahoma is a one-party consent state, just one party. So let me really explain that. So that one party consent state or two-party consent state, it really goes like it's in protection for the people against the government. So it's like wiretapping laws. So it's against the government, right? So, but this is the thing. Like if you're like going against a debt collector or a debt collector is calling you, don't worry about that. And here's why. Because debt collectors say, hey, this is an attempt to collect the debt. Any information obtained will be used for that purpose. All phone calls might be monitored and recorded. So if somebody is recording you, you can record them. And so I wouldn't, naturally just get too caught up into that. But yeah, so to answer the question, you can record the calls. And so you do not just, if you're going to use it in court, that segment just has to be in that call. Like all phone, like if it's a one party consent state like Oklahoma, it just doesn't have to be in there at all. So if it's a two-party consent state, both parties have to know that it's recorded. So the debt collector usually say, hey, this phone call is monitored and recorded. So it just gives you a right, to use it in court. But if it's a one party or two party consent state, don't worry about that. You can still record the call, but using it is a different story. But usually if that segment is in there, you don't have nothing to worry about.
Got you. Is recording it something that you would have to do? Because when people think about court, I know for me, I think of court like you want to avoid court. You think about it like jury duty. You're there all day, every day. You're nervous. So can you kind of break down a typical process when it comes to court, when it comes to these debt collectors?
Well, I kind of like run to the court systems. So it's not like you see on TV. It's not like that at all, right? So in federal court, it's not like that. It's more paper, it's more email, it's more phone than anything. So yeah, so I'm the type of person that's gonna run straight to the courthouse. It's you violate me, we're gonna have some problems, and it's gonna be expensive to get out of it.
Can you give us, let's see, some of the most common violations that you're seeing?
Well, yeah. So you got to understand that there's is multiple common violations. So calling the consumer, right? So a lot of people just run from the phone calls. So the thing is, like, if you're in that predicament, what I would like highly suggest people do is just pick up the phone and get another recording device and start recording the calls, right? So right now I'm doing an interview with you. So and this is the thing, don't lie. Just be honest. Like the more truthful you are, the better off the case is going to be. and just don't be lying, right? So say for example, like we're doing this interview. I will literally pick up the phone and put it on speakerphone, recording the call, and then just be like, "Hey, I'm doing an interview right now. I can't talk." Right? So that's one instance, right? So then you have to have a second instance if you're wanting to make it like more concrete, right? So once again, they're calling back, answer the phone, record a call, and just say, hey, you know, my baby's asleep right now and I can't talk. So now you have a case under the FDCPA. So and that's a good thing that you invited me here to talk, because I want to like clear up a lot of the misconceptions that people have when dealing with debt collectors. Because like the FCRA, which is the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and then you have the FDCPA, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which is two is similar, but is different regulations. So the FCRA regulates information that's potentially wrong, right? So the FDCPA regulates the actions from the debt collector. So that's the difference between the two body of laws to like simplify it, right? So what's wrong with the information? FCRA, FDCPA is what are they doing, right? So another common violation is, say for example, they're calling the consumer, right? So if the consumer just says, the debt collector says, hey, this is a $500 debt, right? And the consumer says, I thought it was $300, right? So say for an example, if you have something like that on a recording and then they dump it onto your credit report. I want to see that credit report because it might be some gold in that credit report, right? So the gold is the violation. And so we're able to turn that violation into monetary compensation. So the thing about it is what just happened right there was a dispute. And so if they don't mark the information disputed, then that's the violation because the debt collector just isn't motivated to helping the consumer in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but just wrenching some money out of their pocket.
Isn't it in the FCRA like the word dispute? It like isn't even defined,
Yeah,
right?
so within the FDCPA, the word dispute is not defined, right? So, and that's the thing that I'm just really glad that you invited me on your show and really asked that question because it's really misunderstood, right? So the thing about it is we are Americans. The foundation of America is to have rights. So,
Right.
and this is the thing, it's not defined. So you can't tell me what a dispute is, and I can't tell you what a dispute is. And so, with that being said, what happens is if there's a discrepancy in, hey, I disputed, or then of course the debt collector is going to say, no, you didn't dispute, right? And so that becomes what's called a fact question. And so, what a fact question is, it has to go to the jury, right? So, say for an example, if the action is filed, so if the case is filed, and so you go through the steps, the legal steps, right, of moving your case along. That means what's what's typically going to happen is the debt collectors are going to try to dismiss the case, right? They always try that. It's super normal. It's like drinking water to a debt collector. They're going to try to dismiss the case. So you just point out to the judge, like, no, this can't happen. And this can't happen because of it's a fact question. It's a material fact question. So they're going to try to get a summary judgment motion, basically try to legally say, hey, it's no facts here. This is garbage. And they're going to try to dismiss it or try to get their summary judgment motion granted. The judge cannot legally grant the summary judgment motion. It has to be heard by a jury. And so that's super powerful because, say, for an example, we're talking about a $200 debt. We're talking about $1,000 debt, right? So this $1,000 debt, this $200 debt that they bought for pennies on a dollar, are you willing to spend $100,000 to say this person did not dispute, or this person did dispute it, or we want to just collect the debt? It's just not. It's just not worth it in business sense, right? So, but going through all of them hoops for the consumer is beneficial for the consumer because typically when I'm involved in these cases, you have the debt is deleted permanently, so it's not coming back. And then you have the debt waiver. So this means that the debt is totally wiped away legally, can't come back, not going to be reported again, all of that above. So like it attempts to make the consumer whole, and the debt collector, tries to escape the liability from the lawsuit, but it won't happen if I'm involved in the lawsuit.
So that's basically the motivation to tell consumers to do things like this. Not only did you just say, not only is it going to get rid of the debt, the financial obligation completely. So for example, if you have all these medical bills on here or whatever, it's going to get rid of that financial obligation completely from the consumer, and it's deleted off the credit report. So like that's the motivation to do these things. So how easy is it basically for someone like me to just walk into the courthouse and file this after, say, I recorded them on the phone, I got the recording, then what do I do with it? What do I do with that? I used 2 cell phones, I got the recording, and then what do I do? So what would you say I do with this?
Well, great question.
Like, am
So
I going to get some money?
yeah, well, okay, so I'm gonna cover all bases, right? So say for example, let's talk about the money part. So in the United States right now, as we talk, it's $405 to sue in federal court, no matter what type of case it is. And then you have to serve the party. So you got to give the lawsuit to the debt collector. So that typically can be like $50 to, 150 bucks, right? So depending on the company, where it's at, and all that type of stuff. So let's just give or take and say $500 is on the table. So let's go back to another scenarios. Let's say, for an example, the consumer just has no money, right? So we can go to the courts and say, hey, look, this is this consumer's financial snapshot, right? This is what this person looks like, right? Can we waive all of this? And some of the times the courts say yes. So that's what it looks like on that aspect, right? So, but before they grant you and say, hey, you can proceed without money or you can't, they look at the complaint. They see if the complaint is thorough enough to even grant that type of stuff. And so if you're like self-help, a lot of the times it's a big, super steep hurdle because you have legal pleading standards. And so um, just trying to figure this out like on your own, like the first time, a lot of people they can't get over that hurdle. And um, so yeah, I will reach out to someone who has the experience, and get a little guidance before you start doing that. Because a lot of people come to me and, they didn't copy something online, and then they get hit with like a motion to dismiss. And then it just turns out not to be good for them. And it's just like, bro, I wish you would have came like before you did this. And it's just like, hey, I'm copying this, or hey, I got this. And I'm like, man, it's just not good. So because you got to understand that the laws are changing. Well, not the law specifically, the statutes is changing. The cases around the statute is changing. So you got to have someone who knows how to do that type of research specifically, um, because I've been told several times and that companies and courts and judges just don't like this body of law because it helps you know that needy person, you know and so it just doesn't help the rich. And so you know
Can you give us a little more about common violations you're seeing? Like top 3 violations somebody could look at their credit report and see violations, or what would you tell somebody who is new to this? What would they be able to look at their credit file? What's something that they should look at? What's something that they should go for? Or should you wait for those phone calls to come in and record? Or can someone just look at their credit file and see that, hey, I might have a case here, and move forward like that?
yeah, so let's talk about basically the letters, right? So say for example, we talked about the phone call, so let's talk about the letter. So the letter, essentially you get the phone call, now here comes a letter. It's very important to look at the FDCPA, and then you have it's certain requirements. The FDCPA lays out their requirements that has to be in a letter. So a lot of the times that's what I'm looking for in the letter. And well, you have to understand that the FDCPA is for the least sophisticated consumer. So it's for the common person. And so you don't have to get all fancy and stuff like that to respond to the letter. But I highly suggest that people that's getting them types of letters to reach out, right? So, and I'll give a little guidance on how to respond to them type of letters. And because it can be, um, the consumer can get compensation if done right. So there was a guy that I was speaking to, I think it was on Instagram. He reaches out on Instagram, and he's asking questions, and I gave him a response based on his question. And so I was like, hey man, I can help you out and do this. And he was just like, oh, I'm gonna do it by myself. I was like, okay, cool. So when he got a response in the mail, and then I said, hey, look, let's jump on the phone, let's talk, right? And I said, man, I was offering to help you, but now let's really think on what you did. And so ultimately, he did it wrong, right? So he was disputing, right? He was disputing, asking for verification, and then he told the debt collector to cease. And I said, dude, what is somebody to do? Like, you're asking for a document on one hand, and then you're telling them to stop. Like, what is that debt collector to do? And he was just like, yeah, you're right. He was like, man, I wish I would have paid attention to what you were saying. And I was just like, well, okay. And so it's very important, man, to read them letters, because them letters are sent out to hundreds of thousands of people. And so if you can be the head guy or the head person of a class action lawsuit to stop this illegal abusive activity, that'd be cool. And so, but this is the thing, it starts with reaching out. And so the debt collectors do that because they don't want consumers to like know what their rights are. And that's a problem. And the FDCPA says it lays out the foundation on how they, supposed to contact the consumers and things of that nature.
So it's as simple as, because I know somebody like myself, I'll overcomplicate this. Sounds like the guy on your IG did too. But it's as simple as getting that phone call. And as you said before, don't lie. If you're at work, tell them you're at work. If your baby is sleeping, like you said, tell them your baby is sleeping. I can't talk about this right now, right? Yeah. Should you tell them what if they say, well, what's a good time for you? Or I'll email you. Or should you tell them to do that? Or should you just leave it at that because you already told them you're busy, and then when they call back, that's the violation. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. So, so look, I'm just be completely honest with you, right? So
Mhm.
I'm just trying to get a violation. I'm just trying to get a
Okay.
violation, right? So I'm just putting enough rope out there, and they're gonna hang themselves. So a lot of defense attorneys say, "Oh, he's what you talking about, got you," or this is he's baiting, and I'm like, dude, no, I have no control of you calling me. Like you called me. So it's just like, it's like, so we go back and forth, but ultimately they end up paying and stuff like that. So the thing, that's like a 1-2 punch, what you just said, right? So
Right.
say for example, I'm at work. And what consumers don't understand is that's a that's like is I want to give the analogy is not telling someone to stop, but that's like telling someone to stop, right? So I'm at
Okay.
work, right? And then I can't talk right now. Again, that's like telling someone to stop, but it's not telling them to stop, right? So, say for an example, that's two violations in one. If the consumer can get that on like one recording, that's two violations in one. Because how the FDCPA is written out. So if you tell someone I can't talk, so you gotta, it goes back to the basics of the FDCPA, just
Okay.
understanding what that statute is meant for, the foundation of it, right? So say for example, it's for the least sophisticated consumer. It doesn't have to be complicated, right? So I just heard you say, well, I could overcomplicate things. Like, don't do that, right? So say for example, I like getting a lot of my ideas from like a nail tech, right? Because a nail tech don't have anything to do with like credit repair or suing anybody. They're gonna, if somebody that's not like in the niche or in the community that you're in, they're gonna find the simplest way to do something. And so that's the thing that I like to follow, is the simplest thing to do whatever it is. And so like I say, that's two violations in one. People just don't know. And
Right.
so the FDCPA lays out what's inconvenient to a consumer, but you just got to tell them. So if you're dodging that phone call, because I see it, right? So I tell people, hey
Mhm.
man, show me your call log, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
it's like red, missed call, missed call, missed call, and it's
Scam
like,
likely, scam likely, scam likely,
yeah,
scam
it's
likely,
like,
scam likely.
dude, answer that, man.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
Now it
so
even says
one,
telemarketer now.
yeah, yeah. So one is inconvenience, right? And then the
Okay.
two is you inform them that you was at work, and you inform them that it was you couldn't talk at work. And so that's very powerful under the FDCPA.
So the original. So let's go back to the money real quick. Well,
Yeah.
maybe we should talk a little bit more about the money.
Yeah, like
That original filing fee. So it used to be $402. Now it's 405. So that original filing fee, can you get that back if you win your case? Can you get all that back?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So yes, you get 100% of that back, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like this the civil rights statutes, right? So it's what's called a fee shifting statute. And what
Okay.
that is it's like somebody like me, right? Broke as a joke. Don't got $3,500 just to go knock on an attorney's door and say, hey, this is the type of case I want you to take, right? So it's a fee shifting statute. And what that means is anything that the consumer comes out of pocket, once the case is successfully like litigated and done with, you can get your money back, right? So the FDCPA allows consumers to obtain 100 to up to $1,000, right? So give or take on what the debt collector has done, and so it's just going to depend. So, but without a question, The consumer gets their actual money back. Yeah, if they had
Right.
to pay for consultation, they had to pay for the filing fee, if they had to pay for whatever it is, right? Just show a receipt, and the lawyer, or you present that to a judge if you're representing yourself, and you say, "Hey, I want my money back." And so the FDCPA allows for the consumer to get whole with the money that was spent.
So, going more than just breaking even, what are some dollar amounts that consumers can win? What are some cases that you're winning? I mean, you're winning like all your cases. So, just so people know, like Vance is not an attorney, but you're winning in court all the time, right?
Yeah.
So,
So I've been a part of, I guess, the landmark case that a lot of people talks about is when I helped a guy here from Oklahoma City. He stays in Dallas now. His name is Alan Jones. It was 1.5 million. So yeah, so we took that to jury, and that's what the jury came back with. And so what happened in that case is the same thing I'm telling you here, is to record the calls, right? So he's called me. He's like, "Hey man, I got this going on." And like I tell everybody, "Hey man, start recording the calls. Just record the calls, right?" And so what we got them on tape saying was, essentially calling him a nigger, right? So, "Hey nigger, pay your bills." So that's what it was. So we took that to the jury, and the jury came back with 1.5 million. And so, yeah, so within that case, we had a lot of actual damages, right? So, in the United States, we banned racism. So, and then, so what was shocking about that case was the
that
guy
gets
who was
worse.
doing it. Yeah, the guy who was doing it, the guy who was making the phone calls, he recently, well, you got to understand the mentality of debt collectors, right? So he had recently got out of prison not too long, right? So think about it. When you get out of prison, like nobody wants to give you a job. And that's just the reality of like the United States, right? And so he stumbles in and be a debt collector. So you got to understand another aspect of being in the debt collection industry, like is high turnover rate. So
Right.
he moved up the ranks pretty quick, right? So he didn't have nothing to do. And he's like, all right, so these people is coming in and out. He's moving up the ranks. And so what happened was we kind of like psychology, like played with him a little bit, right? So guys, they put a lot of ego on the line. And so, we have this thing going around now in 24. It's called like stand on it, right? So we had him on tape, and he just folded in the deposition. And so he still had that prison mindset. And so we used that against him, and he admitted to everything under the sun. And he stood on that, and we stood on $1.5 million.
Sprinkle, sprinkle. What? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason why I like the FDCPA is like it doesn't have procedures for consumers to follow, to dispute, right? So the FCRA has procedures in place for consumers to dispute. So to be on, like, to just tell you, it's like, you know, me and a UFC fighter, right? We're fighting. The FCRA protects these companies just a little bit more. But once they break the law, it's a little bit more exposure. But the FDCPA is just all brawl out, like let's go. You know what I mean? Because it's not it's to protect the consumer in a vicious way, and it's no procedures for consumers to dispute. And that's what I like about it. But like, the FCRA, you have to say, "Hey, I'm disputing the completeness and or the accuracy of the information." And next thing you know, now either TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian has to say, this is a good dispute or whatever. And then they have to relay it over to the furnisher. And it's just a lot of hoops, right, that the consumer has to go to. But dealing with a debt collector, it just doesn't exist like that.
So this applies to medical bills, right? What percentage would you say credit reports have errors on them?
Well, all of them, like 100%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you got to understand what is an error, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're dipping off into the FCRA, so the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So if the information is unverifiable, if the information is incomplete, if the information is inaccurate, right? So say for an example, the FCRA doesn't define accuracy, right? So and the FCRA doesn't define completeness, right? So the FDCPA doesn't, I mean, the FCRA doesn't define verifiable. So now we just have what does that mean, right? And so now you're talking about words, right? So now here we go again. We're talking about what words mean. It's a jury question. And so we're talking about what you should have done, what you could have done. That's a jury question. So, but getting to that part is a hurdle for most people. But so so yeah, that's the gist of it, right? So, say for example, if somebody was to just start disputing under the FCRA, you have what's called Section EB, right? So, and what I'm saying is, to the people that's viewing this, you have the FCRA, and if you look at the table of contents, you have like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? You have it in order, and then they have 602, 603, 604, 605. It just goes in alphabetical order, and then it just goes and you know you just figure it out. You know what I mean? So because say for an example, I just said section EB. So
Right.
that's the first thing that the consumer um, is invoking is section EB. So that kicks in before the consumer actually disputes. So say for an example, if a consumer had a valid claim, you can sue the consumer reporting agencies without even disputing. That's a claim within itself, without
Right.
even without even sending a written letter or whatever the case may be. So that's very powerful within the FCRA. So a lot of people don't understand when it comes to the FCRA, when a consumer sends, let's say for example, the letter. When a consumer sends the letter, that letter is considered under the FCRA a reinvestigation. Um, and so, why is it called a reinvestigation? It goes back to EB, right? So, say for an example, they had to do something right the first time. And so, when
Mm-hmm.
you're addressing the situation, it's called a reinvestigation. And so there's procedures within the FCRA that the consumer reporting agency have to adhere to, which is never done. So and so I was a part of my own case in 2019 where I had to sort out all this stuff, what could have done, what they should have done, and stuff like that. So we came up to the agreement of $300,000, and I had to hire an expert witness. That cost me like $10,000. I had to do some depositions that cost me $2,500 a piece. And so people don't know the amount of time that has to go into it. People don't know the amount of money that has to go into it. And so to have that um, to have that type of result. And so what I discovered in my case was, which is in everybody's case, you just have to go and explore it, right? You just have to bring it to light that, and in my case was Experian, right? So Experian didn't do the, um, they didn't do a proper reinvestigation, right? So it's handled overseas in South America, and so it's quite shocking that the people where they handle their disputes, they really don't speak English like that, right? So the dispute was mishandled. And I proved that, in depositions and going through discovery and stuff like that. And then um, what I found out in deposition, the lady who was giving me her testimony on what happened in my case, she wasn't, she didn't even have a passport. So how can you tell me what's going on overseas when you never been there? You know, it's like it's like how you gonna tell me what's in my refrigerator if you never seen what's in my refrigerator? It's just come on.
Facts.
Yeah. So we got her testimony disqualified, and then we was getting real deep into motion practice to subpoenaing people who actually touched my dispute and stuff like that. So they didn't want to deal with nothing like that, and so they we ended up settling for 300,000.
For people that are just finding out about this, what resources would you recommend that people start learning about the FCRA, the FCDPA?
To be honest with you, I, let's say for an example, right? We look at the FCRA. It's about 100 some odd pages. So somebody might look at that
Right.
and get overwhelmed. And really, all you need to just hone in on is Section EB, Section I,
Okay.
and S2B. That's it. And really, if you was just like highlight and copy and paste like on a Word document, all of that stuff I just said, it's probably 4 pages.
Okay.
Probably 4 pages max. So it's a lot of it just don't don't matter to your situation. And
Right.
so like the FDCPA, uh, I think it's about probably 5 statutes that I use out of that routinely.
Whole thing.
It's
Okay.
yeah, it's not much that people um need to do to be successful.
To the people that send the paper trail, that dispute with letters, do you recommend or would you say that they should be quoting these laws in their letter? Does that help?
No,
Okay.
no, 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 no. Well, let's leave that up to the courts, right? So say
Right.
for an example, when people reach out for help, I gotta see, of course, I'm requesting what they sent and what they got. And it's not there. It's just like, dude, if you would have took out this 609 stuff, right? Just take out the 609, right?
Yep.
And if you just left that out, like it'd have been good
Right.
because it's up for the interpretation. But when you're specifically saying a rule or a statute, that's not up for interpretation, you
Right.
know? And so I think a lot of people just need to drop that type of stuff because you, so that's why I like the FDCPA so much, right? So say for an example, even though my 3-year-old son is scribbling, scrabbling on whatever, it's a valid dispute, regardless of whatever it is, right? So the debt collector doesn't have the power to say, "Oh no, this is invalid," right? But under the FCRA, you got the consumer reporting agency to say, "Hey, look, this ain't valid." So that's why I like the FDCPA a lot.
What would you say to the, so when you send a dispute letter to one of the agencies and they're supposed to put like dispute remarks on there, what do you say to the ones that the dispute remarks aren't being added? What would you say in your professional experience when you see that happen? Because I see it happen in my office where we'll dispute and then 30, 60, 90 days later, the trade line isn't in dispute. There's no dispute marks added. And, what would you say to people or CROs that encounter the same problem?
You got to head to that courthouse. You
Right.
got to head to that courthouse because, you have a statutory violation. And it's very important to understand that you got to have actual damages with that, with the violation too. So, like the denial, or if you're paying for like credit monitoring or something like that. Um, so you got to have that actual damage, right? So you got to have that harm because of a recent Supreme Court case, the Ramirez versus TransUnion case. That's
Mhm.
super big right now,
That's the case.
yeah, dealing with consumer statutes. Um, so, but what I would do specifically is just reach out to someone who's like done it before, right? That has a track record of doing it, and then just litigate it out, just litigate it.
So, yeah, because I know, like I said before, a lot of people hear the word court, or they already don't have the time, the money. It's nervous. But you touched on a good point that says there's a difference between federal court and like civil.
Yeah, yeah, federal court. Yeah, so say for example, what I've talked about was state court and then
Hmm.
federal court. So in state court, you also have your criminal side and you got your civil side, and then also you got the same thing in federal court. So you got your civil side, you got your criminal side, and so.
Right.
But this is the thing. We're in the United States of America. Just get comfortable, and we're at that stage to where we got all these social media outlets, and you know
Right.
Google is at the palm of your hand to where you can just reach out to someone and say, hey, look, you know let's talk about this for like 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? And somebody can share some knowledge with you. And so don't just reach out and ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Right. Right. Let's go back to medical bills real quick because a lot of us have medical bills.
That's a big issue.
That's a
Medical
big
bills is a
issue.
big issue.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
So, specifically, what I wanted to ask you is please explain the difference of the day that you receive the care versus the day that they get the bill. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
picking
yeah.
up what I'm putting down?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that's why it was so funny, right? So because
Right.
it's like an industry thing. So
Right.
I like that. I like that. And the reason why I like that is because I can take that perfect example that everybody is going through, right? And turn it into money. Because this is the thing. Because just like you just pointed out, right? So say for example, I went to the hospital in January. We're just going to say January. But then when it gets reported onto your credit report, they're going to say November, right?
Correct.
So you got to understand under the FDCPA is for the least sophisticated consumer, right? So don't try to super complicate Stanford University this thing. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Right.
So I would literally just call up the debt collector and say, "Hey, I don't recall going to the hospital in November of whatever the year is, right?" So
Hmm.
boom, what we have is a dispute.
Right.
So so you know you, you want to keep that you want to keep that call precise and just super sweet, right? Introduce yourself. Hey, my name is Vance Dotson. I have some, concerns about some information on my credit report, right? Oh yeah, what's your social? What's your don't just give it to them, right? They already got it, right?
Right. Right. You're on the phone at
And
this point.
yeah, come on, man. We're not gonna
Setting
do
them
it.
up.
Yeah, so and you give them the information and you just tell them, hey, I just don't recall, right? If you don't recall it, it's not lying. I just don't recall, right? And is which is the truth. And you just, oh, okay, well, oh, okay. Oh, that's when you get it into your office. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Have a nice day. Right. And so we're gonna let 30 to 45 days pass, and then we're racing to the federal courthouse.
Right. Why is that? Then what do you do? Tell them, I don't remember I didn't go to the emergency room in November. I went in January.
Yeah, so well, when we go to the courthouse, it's not based on if you went
Right.
to the hospital or not, right? So it's based on the information being not marked disputed. Because I promise you, if we was to do that 100 times, we're gonna get 99 violations.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Oh yeah, because this is the thing, right? So you got to understand that it is so casual,
Right.
and it goes back to the first part of our conversation. The FDCPA does not define what a dispute is. So we don't know what a dispute is under the sun. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just, just act like, I just drunk some, what is it, 1492 or whatever. I'm gonna just act real super mellow, right? And then, hey,
E&J.
yeah,
Some bum juice.
this is Vance Dotson, right? And I just don't recall going to the hospital on that day. I just don't recall it.
Okay.
Boom. And keep it real short. Keep it real short. You know, be victorious. Story has it that, we, you know, people switch from AT&T to T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon, and all of that type of stuff, right? So,
Right.
you know, if you're not sure about the bill, and you're unsure of if this is like the equipment fee, or if this is the last month, you know, and if you're just unsure, right? Just tell them you're unsure.
Okay.
And if they don't understand that there's a problem, then we'll have a bigger problem later on down the road.
So you're based out of Oklahoma. I'm in Florida. Is something like this offered? Can people in all states do this?
Yeah, so that's, once again, that's what I like about the United States. Is what I like about federal law, right? So it's the same across the board.
Mm.
So it's not much different. It's not much different that people have to do just because they're in Iowa, or they're in Oklahoma, Texas. It's not much difference because it's federal law. Federal law is usually the same across the board. But
Right.
what kind of sort of differs is how they look at the statute.
Okay.
You know. So say for an example, like I like California area
Mhm.
because they like, dude, you went to the hospital, like you got a paper cut. Oh, that's $1 million. You know what I'm saying? But like
Yep.
somebody in like, let's say Oklahoma, same case, they gonna be like, you got a paper cut, it's no damages, you know? So it just depends on how they're ruling on that statute. So say for an example, some states or some circuits recognize mental anguish as an actual damage, which I think collectively all of them should, because that's an actual damage, right? So
Right.
some circuits just say, hey, look, no, it's not, because I do understand it, because it's easily um you can easily allege that, right? So it's just like a car wreck. Somebody get into a car wreck, first thing they say, oh, my back hurt, right? And so, but I think the mental health needs to be looked at when it comes to this debt collection, because it really does play a big burden on people's mental health dealing with You said what?
Oh, I said 100%. Especially like you're saying, medical bills. There's people that are hundreds of thousands of dollars, 20, 30 thousands of dollars worth of just medical bills alone, and they're getting harassed by these debt collectors. Harassed.
Yeah, because this is the thing. Yeah, it's no joking matter. So, say for example, when I'm doing research, I seen the CFPB release a um, statistic saying that 58% of Americans has medical bills on their credit report. So, the number one and number two reason that people file for bankruptcy, number one is to reduce the interest on student loans, right?
Right.
So because you can't like discharge them in the
Right.
bankruptcy. Number two is medical bills. So that was a thing when President Obama was in office. That's why he was pushing for the healthcare because that's the number two reason why Americans want to file bankruptcy. And say for an example, as of now, the CFPB did a research and said 58% of Americans have medical bills on their report, equaling up to $88 billion. So, yeah, that's a lot of money. And um, so I would like to take a little chip at that and come up with a solution for consumers around the United States.
What are some of the violations that you're seeing with these debt collectors? They're not allowed to call between after certain hours, and before certain hours, right? Can you touch on that a little bit? Maybe somebody doesn't understand that they're getting violated, pause, and by these debt collectors. So, can you talk about a little bit of the time of the window of time that they're allowed to contact you in the first place?
Yeah, so I had I had a well active probably now. I have about three cases that's probably like that, right? So calling
Okay.
is usually calling outside of it, right? Because typically, so I have a 405 number, right? So if I was to move to New York, so the time zones is different. So the debt collector was under the assumption that the person was in Central Time. So it's
Oh,
Yeah, so rather California.
right.
So I think it's like if it's 9 o'clock here in Oklahoma Central Standard Time, it's like specific time is like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And yeah, so hey, they're supposed to know. And so we have that. Yeah, like I said, I have about three active cases like that that's dealing with that scenario. Because I mean, I understand it, right? The phone number when you're doing this skip tracing is like, oh, this person is in Oklahoma, but hey, they moved to California. So
Right.
hey, I'm sorry. The FDCPA is a strict liability law, and once uh once that violation occurs, you have to be. We're going to hold you accountable.
Right. Like they're not allowed to call you before 8 a.m., correct?
Yeah, yeah. So well, and then you have some states have stricter laws on that. So
Okay.
gotta be look at your state laws.
Specific to the state that you're in. Okay. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about like how these credit reports, you say this a lot, credit reports are money. Like people want to talk about money. They want to hear about money. I do the same thing. I say your credit report is money. In the most simplest form, how can you explain that our credit reports, even a screenshot on Credit Karma, everybody loves Credit Karma. A screenshot on Credit Karma could result in money.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about Credit Karma, right? So Credit Karma, as we speak, is worth like $8.1 billion. And so they're in the data industry, right? So they're not typically essentially like giving out the score that everybody thinks, right, is right or wrong, whatever the case may be. I don't get into that debate, right? So
Right.
let's look at the credit report. And to be honest with you, um, the consumer should be geared to wanting to sue the debt collector
Mm-hmm.
because they're on the credit report, they're trashing the credit report, they're
Mm-hmm.
bogging their score down, and that's an actual damage within itself. And so yeah, so if I obtain a credit report, my number one goal is to get a violation to go to federal court. Period. Point blank. That's all I want to do. And so a common violation is like you said, right? So you send a dispute, they don't mark it disputed, or, you know, lately, like I just take the story from the consumer and tell the debt collector, right? I'll ask I'll ask the consumer, like, tell me why you could not pay this. And I'll just tell them, say, hey, look, I couldn't pay this because I lost my job, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just not going to pay, right? And so um, a lot of violations spring up out of that because they're not reading the letter. They don't like a lot of people put emphasis on these letters, and these
Mhm.
companies is not reading the letters. And the reason the way I know that, right? Because I mean, you can simply just tell a debt collector like, I refuse to pay, right? And the next thing you know, you got these debt validation stuff in the mail. It's like, dude,
Yep.
like I said I wasn't gonna pay this. Like, go, oh,
Right. I'm not paying you.
yeah. And so a lot of violations spring up out of that. So getting the story of the consumer is super very important because every account is like has its own story, right? So just convey it over to the debt collector. And I promise you, if people start picking up on that, because this is the gym, they're like, this is the thing. They're not reading the letter, right? Everybody like everybody wants the systems that's like super fast, super, all of this type of stuff. And it's just like, why don't let's slow down and read the letter, see what the need of the consumer is, and like go to the next step, right? They're not doing that. So there where you're not doing it is a huge opportunity for money. And so I've seen that there's a defense firm that represents like I'm gonna just say 70%, right, of the nation, right? It's a huge um, defense firm. And so I've seen their YouTube interview, and he was just like, yeah, you know, it touches the bottom line when we have to read all these letters, and it's just like, oh, okay, so let me do a little bit of research on
Hmm.
who all your clients is, and then let's you know send some send some fancy paperwork through.
Right. Right.
And so yeah, so I mean, I make light of that, but it's really it's a serious issue when they're
Yeah.
when they're ignoring a dispute, right? When they're not really reading the dispute. And so a lot of the stuff that I do, like I don't want to say it's trial and error, but I'm like super like trying to shoot a moving duck, right?
Right.
So say for an example, what's picking up right now is text messages, right? And
Okay.
so with text messages, you have technology that's that's always moving, right? So say for example, there it's a great system out there. It's called Go High Level, right? And so within Go High Level, you're allowed to like pick up keywords, right? So say for example,
Correct.
the debt collector sends that text message to you, hey, you owe this money, and then they're gonna say, hey, stop, right? They're gonna
Yeah.
stop. That system, because of Twilio, just automatically picks up stop, right? So say for an
Right.
example, I had a long run at it before the industry kind of like caught on to it. So I would just tell a person, I'll say, hey, just text back, I refuse to pay, right? So that's statutorily what the consumer has to say. And
Okay.
so we had a long, good run out of it, right? So before a lot of lawsuits sprung up, a lot of people was like a lot of debt collectors breaking the law.
Right.
So about $5,000 north, it was just like golden, right? Just doom, just coming in. So I was like, dude. So, like I say, it's a moving duck, right? So we we got to come up with different ways, right? Different ways to say I refuse to pay, right?
Correct.
So so I just don't have any money, right? So I'll use that, and use until they catch on to that, and then we find something else, and then do something else, and it's always a moving target with debt collectors, and so yeah,
Seems like it's easier.
it's kind of it's kind of
We
it's
make it
kind of
harder,
crazy.
basically. Yeah.
Well, look, he probably didn't ask for it, but come here one second. Just come here one second. Come here one second. Come here one
And
second.
again.
Come here one second. We're live right now. Come on, come on, come on.
Oh, hey,
This is the
postman.
postman. This is the postman. So we're doing a interview right now. So if you, I mean, okay, look, I'm a lot younger than you, and what we call
Not a
this,
lot younger than me, but go ahead.
yeah. And we have a meaning called no cap, right?
Mhm.
So what no cap means, I ain't lying. So what did you just deliver her? Like, what did you just deliver her? And we're gonna open it, but we're gonna tell you to
Certified letter.
okay, certified letter. But I'm finna open it 1 second. We're finna open it up and and we I want you don't say the number, right? I want you to describe what you what your
The folks.
your
Look at the return receipt.
yeah you gotta return that back. So I want you to describe what this is. Just describe it, right? What like just from looking at this, what do you think this is?
As payment.
A check, right? So how often do you because the FedEx man already came.
Right.
So how often do you deliver these types of things to me or to this office?
On a regular basis, it's hard to say because you get several pieces of mail, so pretty regular.
You see what I'm saying? So this is something, essentially that, he delivers to my office pretty regular. And oh, here goes another one. Here goes another one. Right? So, and here goes another one. Dude, let's look at it. Now keep in mind, man, this ain't we haven't coerced this. This is live.
Right.
Right? This is live. So I mean, and then it's kind of crazy that people think that like, man, if you just focus in on one thing, and I told a lot of things on your interview right now, it'll happen for you, right? So say for an example, like what are we this? What do you think this is?
It's not the same as that other one. Same as that other one. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
man.
you. Thank you for your
Got
cameo.
another one. You know
Not a
what
paid
I'm
actor.
saying? Thank you, man.
Well,
Thank you.
sound like I'm in the
Thank
wrong.
you.
Look like it.
Thank you for your
Let me
service.
go back to work.
Thank you for your service.
All right, I'm good.
To be honest with you, I mean, I caught that right on live. Say for example, man, I make light of it, right? But essentially the same thing I just told you about is how these checks came into the office, right? And so if if the people that's viewing this, if they, they reach out to you and they might be sitting on some money, right? And so, but you have to be consistent, right? You just can't say, oh, okay, like this is a one shot thing, like oh, this is then the money tree just like gets shaken. Like, no, come on.
Right. Let's
But
see.
from what I can tell you is four checks has came today, and I'm at least $10,000 up. At least $10,000 north up today. Today, one day.
It's only Monday.
Yes.
You're just starting off pretty good. You're starting off pretty good.
So it's I see your tagline, stay at home millionaire. Yeah, but I'm in the office, so don't think I'm a stay at home millionaire.
I'm just the favorite one. I just want your opinion. Would you agree with the statement that I had put that the top 3 reasons for bad credit would be lack of income, lack of financial literacy, and spending habits?
Well, so I would disagree with one.
Okay.
Because the consumer report has nothing to do with your income, right? So say, for example, it's just dealing with numbers. And say financial literacy, right? That plays a part.
Right.
And what was the third one?
It was financial literacy, income, and spending habits. The 3 top reasons for bad credit.
I mean, I couldn't. Hey, that's my son coming in. So I can't. Well, so let's talk about it. Let's dive deep.
Yeah. Yep.
So say for an example, the FICO score, right? Because if we're talking about bad credit, so bad credit is typically looked at like, a low FICO score. So that can be changed around like super quick, right? So say for an example, I seen on a previous video of yours, you were saying, how you obtain a secure credit card and it increased your FICO score. So that's the thing that people really don't understand is if I have a low FICO score, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to go to a local credit union. Mm-hmm. Why a local credit union? Is because you have brick and mortar. You're dealing with a financial institution, right? So say for example, you can go in, talk to somebody, you can go in, do transactions, whatever you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shop around, and this is local, shop around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out who offers the higher limits. So say for example, just for this example, right? We have a credit union called ISU Debt Collectors, right? So we go up in the ISU Debt Collectors Bank, right? And we say, hey, do you offer the secure credit card program? They're gonna say, yeah. We're gonna say, hey, how much can you increase the limit up to? You're gonna say 50,000. Cool. Look, guys, don't get nervous because you heard $50,000. Don't get nervous, right?
Right.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just because you can increase the limit every single day. You can increase the limit every single week. You can increase the limit every 2 weeks. You can increase the limit every month. But the more you do something, the better the result is going to be on the back end. So this is the thing that people don't understand is like step 1, just go get it. So when I tell people, hey, go get a secure credit card from a local from a local credit union, they come back talking about, oh, I went to Discover. Oh, I went to Capital One. Dude, I'm not saying, you're right or wrong, but it's going to hinder you if you're trying to build, right? So let me give like a quick analogy. So say for example, we have in America, and I'm sorry, like if they come at me with like a cease and desist letter, but like you have Planet Fitness, right? So, but Planet Fitness, it doesn't have a lot of the weights so you can be like a bodybuilder, right? So Planet Fitness is just a beginner, it's just a lot of like, treadmill type stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a bodybuilder is not going to be like, well, I'm finna go to Planet Fitness. You know what I mean? So it's like that, right? So when you have a LA Fitness account, right? I mean, they got the big weights, so you can throw 1,000 pounds on that thing and just do it, you know? You want the capability of increasing the limit. So say, for example, if you go to Capital One and be like, yeah, I got a $300 secured credit card. And you're like, okay, I did good this week. I got $1,000 I want to slam on this. They're going to be like, no, we can't do it. The underwriting system ain't going to let them do it. So, but with a local credit union, you can continue to do it until you get that, $50,000 limit. Right. So what's happening there is you're increasing your high credit limit.
Correct.
And every time you increase your high credit limit, you decrease your debt to credit ratio. Once them two things happen, that's the FICO score increase. And that's told on a simple form, right? So say for an example, so I was probably like 50 pounds lighter probably the last year. And so it's a great guy that I look up to. Is Brian Ponder. He was just like, look, I understand that you're walking a lot, but you have to incorporate weights into what you're doing. And next thing you know, I got to studying the science behind weight loss and building muscle and burning fat. And it's all the same. It's no different from, whatever the case may be. It's all science. It's all numbers. And once you understand the very basic points of it, now you're able to get a little jiggy with it and build up a lot of muscle, or you just want to get toned and stop. It just depends, right? So, input, output is very important. And that's the case with credit repairs, input, output, right? So I think if you like had to slice credit repair up, it's two things: increasing the FICO score and disputing, right? But them things, they don't necessarily mash together,
right?
Because people will pay you and be like, well, you dispute everything and now your credit report looks like a white sheet of paper. And then they gonna come back and say, hey, why my score ain't up? You see, so it's not it's hard to explain, but it's not like the transmission and the motor, right? So you need to build credit. And that's something that a credit repair company can't do for you unless they coming out the pocket, right?
Right.
So the disputing is one, and building a FICO score is one. And so, but even in this aspect, right? So I did research on who doesn't have an active credit card in America, and it's over 100 million people. They just don't. So it's a third of Americans who don't even have a credit card. So I was just like, dude, you know what? I'm gonna just make a book. This is before Chat GPT. I was like, dude, I'm gonna make a book and just give it out to the people for free. So yeah, it's so I'm about, sustainability. And so building that FICO score like that is because people is not going to mess off their money, right? So say for example, if I had a $500 credit card or $500, I'm going to think long and hard before I mess off 500 actual dollars. But with this $500 like a credit card, let's go buy some bottles. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's why I like that secure credit card, because that's your money and you ain't gonna mess it off. And so, but that's like, to manufacture a FICO score, that I'll go to that 100% of the time, because you can literally just keep increasing it, and then you're going to attract other future credit card offers by doing that. And so what people don't understand is, it's like, it goes back to lifting weights. How much do you want? Right? So how more defiant do you want your abs? how more defined do you want your arms, or whatever the case may be. You just work on it, and you just keep doing it. And then next thing you know, you look, it's like, dude, I literally had a lady into my office, right? So I'm like, so I give her the book, right? It's free, right? And I keep saying it every time I mention this book, I'm gonna just say before Chat GPT, because there's a lot of Chat GPT stuff going. And I'm like, dude, come on, man. So I give her the book. So just like anybody else I'm talking to, I take out time and explain all this type of stuff. A lot of people don't do it. A lot of people don't do it. So I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And so um she does it. She does it. She comes back into the office and she says she refreshes her scores and stuff. And she said, "Oh shit." And I said, "What?" She was like, "My score." Because a lot of people, they don't have like, because I can get real aggressive with disputing tactics, right? And
Right.
so we threw off a few um lawsuits, right? And so that's going to get you that deletion that you want pretty fast, right?
Correct.
And so in a short period of time, her scores went up to 780s. And so she was very happy about that. And so um, if the consumer just focus on that for a long period of time or a short period of time or whatever the case may be, a lot of it is going to play on how much you're putting down and how frequently you're increasing it. And so, like again, it depends on. It's just like, you know, it depends on how the person is doing it, right? It's like a gym membership. Like, oh yeah, I got the gym membership. Like everybody's gonna be stoked, right? And it's not about the gym membership. It's about if you're going on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever, your little rest you got,
Right.
And so people think that, you just hire a credit repair company. Next thing you know, it's just like done. No, that's not how it works.
I love your book. Do you have your book with you? Can you let people know where they can get their copy?
So yeah, so the book is here. It's securing a higher FICO score, right? So say for example, the title is Securing a Higher FICO Score. And so
Hello.
that's secure credit card. So
Yep.
person can go get this book at noactivecreditcards.com. This with an S on the end. So noactivecreditcards.com. And so I would just, ship this to you. So you don't have to pay for the book per se, but you just got to pay for the UPS man to bring it
Right.
to you. And I'll ship you a free copy. So like I say, before Chat GPT, this is before.
Right? We got to let people know before when we walked uphill to school both ways.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that Chat GPT is just
It's
different,
changing the game. It's
It's
changing
like,
the game, but
yeah, yes, but people don't put thought into it, right? So I like the home cooked meal. It's just like, dude, we can't like automate everything. What happened to the human element of something, Let's talk about the
yeah,
human mind, I'm like, dude, come on, man, let's do it.
trying
But
to
to
eliminate
be
it.
honest with you, I think that's why I run circles around the average credit repair company, whatever average is, right? So I think that's why I run circles around them because I keep stuff simple
Yep.
and I don't complicate nothing. Like I will literally write. So I'll say, I'll say, hey, come to my office, right? As you was alluding to, like, come to my office, come to my office. So I get a group of people that'll come to my office, and then I will literally, oh, let's come here, Chandler. Come here, Chandler. You want to go on YouTube? You go on YouTube? You want to say hi, Nicole? Hi. Hey,
Hi,
Nicole.
nephew.
You want to show your Mickey jersey? So you
Of
gotta,
course.
so you gotta tell them your brother plays. Your brother play
Yep.
baseball. You got a game. Yep. Was you going to the restroom?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Come back. Yeah. So, I don't. A lot of my day-to-day operations, man, is input output, right? So, say
Yep.
for an example, while I say something works or something don't work, I would literally like my thing is I'm gonna do it 100 times at least before I say this works or this doesn't work, right?
Right.
Or what I need to tweak. And so that's super important, right? To measure input output. So, but if you're just doing something 5 times, you just don't have enough data. You just don't you don't have enough reps. So at least, I say, hey, I refuse to pay the debt, at least 100 times. And then I'm going to tweak that a little bit and have it, you know, um, ready to rock and roll. Is a guy called me and he said to me, he said, man, it was a debt collector, a small debt collector. And he said, man, the refusal to pay isn't working. Oh man, I think I was getting me some fish, and I just stopped. I stopped. I said, dude, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he was like, oh, it's not working. I'm like, you don't know the basics, bro. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm just going to have a whole conversation with you around it until you get it. And so we had a whole conversation. And I was like, I mean, I'm thinking in my head, he don't know the basics, right? So the basics of it is I refuse to pay, right? So that's the basics. So don't veer off from the basics. And then you just come up with several hundred ways of saying it. So, say for an example, like I was telling you, the technology and the keywords, right? So the small time debt collector, instead of them taking hundreds of thousands of dollars of hits, they can only take that, a couple times. Then they're going to change up their operations. So with this particular company, they changed up their operations. He was like, "Yeah, man, when I say I refuse to pay, they're taking me. They'll say, hey, we're not going to contact you anymore, right?" So I was just like, dude, why not change it up? You have no money, right? I'm not going to pay. I will not pay, right? So it's hundreds of ways to do it, hundreds of ways to say it, really thousands, right? Um, so what I did over the weekend, Saturday, literally Saturday, is I came up with 500 ways to say I basically just don't have no money, right? So say for example, in a black community, it's you ask somebody for some money in a black community, like a male, they're gonna be like, I'm fucked up. So what does that mean? That means I don't have no money.
Down
right?
bad.
So yeah, so it goes back to what I was telling you. Yeah, I'm doing bad right now. You know what I'm saying? So it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? So say for example, I get a lot of my ideas out of people outside of credit repair. Like, so I use a nail shop, right? Or nail salon. And that's the ordinary person, right? So you got to understand the FDCPA is for the least sophisticated consumer. So if people is thinking like that, well, then that's what it is, right? So um, I'll just play with it, right? Like we have a baseball game this evening. I would literally just take my iPad and I would just literally come and just say, um, yeah, I would just literally freak it out, right? So say for example, I'm gonna open up my phone and come with let me show you what I was coming up with. My financial situation has been really difficult. I'm working hard to manage. I appreciate the extra details you gave me, but I'm not going to pay. Please forgive me as I'm working towards to fix my home and try to get brakes for my new car. Right? So
That was a lot. That was a mouthful.
you look at that and be like, really? But I promise you, That's how them checks came into this door.
Right. 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 You've said from the beginning, don't lie and don't overcomplicate anything.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
yeah, it's really that simple. Like, I mean, I just come up with ways like, okay, cool. Like, so to me, to be honest with you, like the whole debt validation thing is like super dead, right? It never was a lot. It's just something that people created, right? And so
Yep.
when people create stuff, it's just like, dude, come on now. And so these companies just went with it. So, but under the FDCPA, like once you dispute outside of that 30-day mark, dude, they really don't have to respond to it, right? So you just
Right.
literally like sending off a piece of paper at this point. So how did I monetize that? All right, cool. So what I said was, so keep in mind, you're literally just throwing some shit on the wall, right?
Right.
So I'm like, okay, cool. So typically when you send off what's called a debt validation letter, whatever that type stuff is, you send it off and then they just send you something in the mail, right? Oh, this is what the medical bill, or this is what Sprint said, or this is what the reposition. They just send that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did I start monetizing this? I was like, dude, the only convenient way to contact me is via email. So I just put that little sentence right there within that letter. And so once again, you'll send it off. They'll send you something in the mail. And then now you got the physical mail, and now I'm finna sue you because I told you to send it to me in email, right? And so we got a squabble about that. It's an inconvenience to me. And so one of them checks is about that. So it's just like this dude Vance right here, man, keep reinventing himself over and over and over. So it's just like you were saying earlier, right? So you were saying like, your dispute, and then they won't put like their dispute on their remarks, right?
Yep.
And so that's a violation under the FCRA and the FDCPA, right?
Right.
So a lot of people come to me and they like, oh, I'm like, okay, screenshot this. Show me what I need a full screenshot, right? And so they'll have them remarks on there. So, and then I ask them a question like, so some people might have like a legitimate like issue, right? And I say, well, because they can say it's disputing, but you really didn't take care of the dispute, right? So I asked them, like, they'll come back with like, some answer, right? And I just be like, okay, cool. So what I would do is I would literally just handwrite, say, I'm no longer disputing, update my credit report, right? So when they don't update the credit report, they don't remove it.
Right.
Violation, right? So yeah, so
Love it.
once again, so like it's all about the violation. It's never about the debt, right? I don't even care about the debt. And then so yeah, so like a couple of days, like so say for example, young lady reach out and she's like, yeah, I want this stuff off my report. So I'm like, all right, cool. Look, so let me employ some tactics, right? So I pull out a white sheet of paper and pen, and I say, hey, I ran out of money. That's what I said. I ran out of money, and I can't pay the debt, right? So what they did was they marked the information disputed. And I'm like, okay, we have a violation here because that's not a dispute, right? We're refusing to pay. So I'm like, all right, cool. So yeah, now we're in like settlement discussions and stuff like that. And I'm like, dude, look, to get rid of me right now, $4,500, So it's just a lot of tactics that can be done to make the debt collector, bag up. Yeah, so I just think like, dude, like just turn like lesson like what I've discussed to you in like the last 10 minutes has been so simple, right? But yet powerful.
Right.
But you gotta know how to like take it to the next level. And so turn it into a money making machine. And but yeah, so that's I'm a real firm believer. It's like crazy. I mean, it's over $10,000 in checks here. And I tell people all the time, like, dude, like, you should be making over 100 grand easy a month doing credit repair. And so it's like Monday, like repeat it. You know what I mean? But once again, I will repeat essentially what I just told you hundreds of times, and it's going to happen because another factor is right. So it's always input output at 100, right? Input output at 100, and then like the people that you're dealing with ain't gonna be like super consistent, right? So if you do it 100 times, on the other end of the stick, 20, 25 might come, right?
Mhm.
And so that's 25 violations that you can work with, right? So say for example, if you're like, because I'm treating these violations like crack, like, dude, look, you know what? You got
You got
2,500,
any
you
more
can
of
get,
those?
yeah, you got
more than
3,500,
500?
you know what I'm saying? You done. So if you just do the math, right? So say for example, dude, if we just get 25 violations and we just like super do it at like 3,500, you know what I'm saying? Like, dude, we got us a good sandwich for the day. You know what I mean? And like these debt collectors, they're wanting to settle. They're wanting to settle. They're like, dude, we don't want to deal with this,
Of
right?
course. Yeah, of
Putting all this
course.
stuff, I put a lot of stuff on the internet, and they just don't want that exposure. Like, like I had Midland in a deposition, and they said they received over 8,000 pieces of mail per day.
Right.
I'm like, dude, okay, if I can slip one letter through their system and get 4,500 bucks a day, that's over a $2 million business, right? So I'm like, dude, like it's just a great opportunity if people like understand the gems in information and data and doing research. Right. So say for example, like I'll do a lot of research on Pacer, right? I'll see why these people is getting sued, right? And I'll just go to, like if I notice like a debt defense firm people is like representing these companies a lot, I will go look up that attorney's name and see all these cases that attorney is in, or all the cases that this firm is in, and I'll see, I analyze like, okay, cool, this case took 3 months, right? Now they got a notice of settlement, so it took 3 months to settle. Okay, cool. So let me go back and research the case and see what they did, and then I just reverse engineer it.
I would recommend everybody gets a Pacer account. Would you agree with me? Get a Pacer account.
I'll spend at least $1,000 a month on that thing. Yeah,
I know. Yep.
but it pays off, right? So
Right.
you got to understand it's consistency, right? So I've been through a lot of hurdles, right? Right. So it's not. I just didn't hit the wall and stop. I hit the wall, got up, dust myself up, and continue to do it. So it's not just an overnight success. It's not. It's 20 years in the making, and I'm still working on the weekends, coming up with different things to say and do, things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, your shirt says it all. At the end of the day, sue debt collectors, get money, sprinkle, sprinkle. Yeah, when it comes to credit, there's a stigma with credit repair, good debt versus bad debt. But the thing is with these debt collectors especially, they're banking on your ignorance. They're banking on you or a consumer to just give up, like you're saying. They get a stall letter, they get discouraged, they get overwhelmed, right, with the whole process. And they're banking on you to do that and give up. But as you keep saying, don't do that. And if somebody would want to reach out to you, they should do that as well. You're not an attorney, and you're still winning.
Yeah, commonly with that stall letter, right? So say for example, typically that's coming from the consumer reporting agencies, right? So um, when I typically get it, I'm going to draft a lawsuit because under the FCRA, it doesn't. Well, let's talk about TransUnion specifically. TransUnion, they're going to say, hey, um, we applaud you, and did you use a credit clinic and all that type of stuff, right? So, say for example, under the FCRA, it doesn't give them the right to do that, right? So, under the FCRA, it says it has to be frivolous and something else, right? So they didn't deem it to be frivolous. They just said, "Hey, did you get a credit click?" Go da 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 da.
Right.
Like, dude,
Yep.
you didn't reinvestigate the dispute at all. So now, we're going to go into litigation about that. So once again, that's another opportunity that people can take and just turn it into money. But they have to know like the basics of what to do, and how to spot it and turn an opportunity like into compensation. Like, I mean, I'm not a rich guy. I'm from East Side Oklahoma City. Like, you had to turn like the bad things into the good things like all the time. You know what I'm saying? So you just got to know how to like recognize it.
For someone that's just starting out, either with repairing their own credit, starting a credit repair company, or wanting to do what you do, what would you recommend?
Well, starting a credit repair business, really, I would 100%, man. Um, it, I want to change the landslide of like all of this, how credit repair is viewed. So starting out, go 100%, go get your credit monitoring. Like, go get a credit monitoring company, not a credit monitoring link. Like, not, you know, somebody giving you $5 every time somebody sign up. No, that's a piece of the pie, right? So say for an example,
Bakery.
go get 100% of the pie. Yeah, go get 100% of the pie. Like, you got to understand, like, it's super profitable. And the thing about it is, like, while, a lot of people glorify the money, but it's not the money. You got to understand this. Credit Karma, I get my data directly where Credit Karma gets their data from, directly, right? So we got the same data broker, right? Mm-hmm. The thing about it is they're worth 8.1 billion. So say for example, they're giving out the data they're giving you free. So it has to be something valuable within what they're doing to be worth $8.1 billion, right? So it's the people's information. So starting out with a credit repair company, I would tell them, dude, look, go 100%, go get your own credit monitor.
Okay.
Get 100% of the pie. And then do your affiliate marketing, how they do that, right? So do the whole affiliate marketing, how they do it, build that up, and really stick to one thing, right? So whatever that one thing is, like, just like super run it up and just be laser focused on that. So I'm super focused on debt collection, right? So that's what I'm monetizing. So it's a couple of ways. Like, I looked at all of the ways that a debt collector would contact a consumer, and then I just came up with a way to monetize it, right? So say for example, we talked about the phone calls, right? So that's a way to contact the debt collector. And so the emails and the text messages can be done one way, meaning like just refusing to pay, right? Or changing it up a few different ways. And then we talked about the letters, and then we talked about the credit reporting. That's 5 different ways. So, and that's all the debt collector can contact the consumer. So I just figured out a way to monetize it, and it's that's basically what I stick to, and that's what I do.
And now you're getting checks every day by the handful. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, because dealing with consumers is just like, dude, like, I mean, a lot of people put that like reoccurring stuff on a pedestal, but dude, really, I've done that. I've been there, done it, and it's like a super headache because like a lot of people's payment gonna fail. It's just like, like it's just excuses, man. Like at the end of the day, dude, I'm just trying to get me like a burger from Burger King and like perform a service, and then that's really it, So it was just like let's keep it real simple, you know.
But Vance, thank you for being here with me today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the knowledge. My dear friend, Vance Dotson.